afternoon, dear colleagues and friends. We are happy to welcome you on our today's webinar with Jeannette Stewart. We are ready to start our online event, and today we will talk about sharing economy and how it applies to the language industry. While we are waiting a couple of minutes more for the rest of the audience, please type any sign in the chat so that I will be able to know that you hear me well. You can join this webinar on Facebook as well. I mean live stream, literally. Just follow our official Facebook page. You are welcome to share, like, or comment on our live Facebook videos. We appreciate your feedback. Just to remind you, all our UTIC webinars and speeches videos are on our website, utic.eu, in the video section of the website. You can always watch there any video you need for free. And you are always welcome to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Now let me introduce our today's speaker. Jeannette Stewart is a co-founder of Translation Commons, an online volunteer-based public charity aiming to offer and share tools and resources and to facilitate community initiatives. Jeannette has been involved in high-profile projects such as Genome Project and prototyping the online unified submission process for the European Medicine Agency. She writes a column in MultiLingual Magazine on community initiatives. Jeannette has founded, served on the board of directors, moderated, and volunteered in various educational and health charities. Today's meeting is going to be hosted by me, Stanislav Bogdanov. I am the CEO of the UTIC. Now it's time for me to turn it over to our speaker, and before I do that, I want to ask all of our attendees to send questions in the chat window. I will ask them at the end of the presentation. Now I'm switching the webcam video of Jeannette and giving her the mic. Just a second. Jeannette, happy to have you here. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation, and the mic is yours.
Well, thank you very much for hosting, and thank you very much to all the listeners for joining in. I'm very pleased to be able to speak to you and about the business of sharing and the sharing economy. It is something that we all need to know a lot more, and I'm very happy to provide you some insights. So let's start with the presentation. And I'd like to start, if Stanislav, if you can put the first slide on. Thank you so much. The digital disruptors, driven by nothing more than web access and smartphones, digital disruptors are everywhere. We all know them. WhatsApp has displaced telecom companies, Netflix has changed home entertainment, and Airbnb cracked the hospitality industry. Uber is perhaps the ultimate example of a digital disruptor, allowing people to track their taxis arrival progress and pay with a mobile phone. Now that's a transparency of the kind never seen before in the taxi industry. And it has changed the business model completely. So disruptive innovation is appearing across the digital sphere to break completely the dominant business models. But as well as famous disruptors like Uber, Skype, Spotify, WhatsApp, Netflix, and Airbnb, just to name a few, there are many startups entering every day and glad to be part of this level playing field. So examples of some of these fantastic companies are, let's take Airbnb. It's the world's largest accommodation provider, and yes, yet it doesn't own any real estate. Let's take Netflix. It's the world's largest movie house, but it owns no cinemas. So imagine life without ownership. You own nothing, you rent everything. You do this because it's cheap. You scale up or you scale down as needed. You're basically always optimizing. You pay for precisely what you use, when you use it, and basically nothing more. This is the consummate sharing economy. Is this the death of ownership? A future where everything is available and nothing is yours? This can never really happen easily. At least it's not around the corner. But the success of these unicorns that we see has left us all speechless, and we're all dreaming basically of repeating their success for our own benefit. So what is this sharing economy? Some call it gig economy, others call it the peer economy, others the collaborative economy, or collaborative consumption. Still, others call it a sharing economy. Tomato, tomato, basically. What's important is what it is, not what it is called. So the sharing economy is about over a year or over a decade old. Although the term already existed, it actually surfaced sometime after 2007, the iPhone and the Great Recession. The iPhone helped put the internet and GPS in people's pockets, and the Great Recession helped make them desperate and broke, basically. These two developments sowed the seeds of the sharing economy. Consumers were looking for new ways to save, workers were looking for new ways to earn, and smartphones gave them both new ways to transact. So, Stanislav, if you want to do the next slide, we'll look at the sharing economy first. It's an umbrella term with a range of meanings, often used to describe economic activity involving mostly online transactions. More specifically, the sharing economy is an economic model, often defined as a peer-to-peer or P2P based activity of acquiring, providing, or sharing access to goods and services that are facilitated by a community-based online platform. Originally, it grew out of the open source community and again referred to peer-to-peer based sharing of access to goods and services. Now, the term is used in a broader sense to describe any sales transactions that are done via online marketplaces, even ones that are business to business, rather than just peer-to-peer. For this reason, the term sharing economy has been criticized as misleading, some arguing that even services that enable peer-to-peer exchange can be primarily profit-driven. However, many commentators assert that the term is still valid as a means of describing a generally more democratized marketplace, even when it's applied to a broader spectrum of services. So a collaborative economy is a marketplace where consumers rely on each other instead of large companies to meet their wants and needs. So collaborative economies consist of giving, swapping, borrowing, trading, renting, and sharing products and services for a fee between an individual who has something and an individual who needs something, generally with the help of a web-based middleman who provides the digital platform. Slide, please. Collaborative consumption is the shared use of a good or service by a group. So collaborative consumption differs from standard commercial consumption in that the cost of purchasing the good or service is not borne by one individual. The cost is divided across a larger group as the purchase price is recouped through renting or exchanging. Collaborative consumption basically is a form of sharing. Bartering and peer-to-peer renting, for example, have been used by societies for thousands of years. This is a way to provide a group of individuals with an asset without requiring each person to purchase it on his or her own, basically. So collaborative consumption, there are three transaction models. Business to consumer, where Netflix is a great example. Peer-to-peer, Airbnb is an example here. And business to business, a company like Cargomatic, which matches shippers with carriers, is the perfect example. Critics of collaborative consumption argue that the informal nature of such arrangements allows individuals to bypass local regulations that businesses offering similar services must follow. These businesses may have to pay licensing or other regulatory related fees in order to legally operate. So these fees make their services more expensive than those provided by individuals who do not have to pay them. For example, Airbnb created an online platform that lets owners of homes and apartments rent out their space to others. Traditional hotels have challenged the legality of Airbnb rentals because those owners typically do not have to adhere to regulatory requirements or pay the associated operational fees. This outcry led to efforts to regulate or crack down on such rental operations. With the sharing economy concept, traditional roles change. So customers are also contributors, co-creators and experts. Competitors can become partners. And some of those involved in creating a solution may come from industries that a company might not normally think it has anything in common with. Furthermore, revenue and costs are different from conventional economics because it's not just about money. A larger part of the resources that contribute to a solution come from participants who are also motivating by helping others, by reputation, by social status or ideology. The sharing economy is still very much in its infancy, and given the variety of stakeholders involved, its emergence as a force for good is being discussed from a wide variety of different perspectives. On the one hand, there are those who see the sharing economy as a tool for addressing pressing social justice or environmental issues, such as people establishing time banks, food sharing schemes, or those pursuing alternative low-carbon lifestyles. At the other end of the spectrum, there are many entrepreneurs who stand to make millions of dollars from their new sharing platforms, mainly by encouraging people to rent out the underutilized goods they own. Could grouping these quite diverse activities together under the umbrella of the sharing economy be anyway problematic? One danger is that by attaching too much emphasis on self-interest and personal gain in relation to the concept of sharing, the altruistic aspects of sharing could be undermined, and the more benevolent motivations of those who share could be increasingly ignored. Understanding the core values behind sharing is crucial. People share mainly for 4 reasons: social, to meet people; economic, to save money; practical, to save time; and sustainable, to protect the environment. These are the 4 drivers that help the sharing economy become successful. The technology drivers are mobile technology, social media, online payment systems. The shift in values, idle inventory, sustainability values, common good, the economic realities, economic disparity, VC funding, the environmental pressures, increased population, strain on resources, population density. I came across the 4 basic principles of collaborative consumption outlined by Rachel Boatsman in her book, What's Mine is Yours, which creates a basis for a successful sharing platform. These are willingness to share, which is belief in the commons, providing a unique solution to a problem, critical mass, how many people are there, and building trust. In a TED Talk on how reputation is the new capital, again, Rachel Boatsman talked about how technology is key to building trust. It can empower users, allow them to make meaningful connections, and eventually start sharing. The real magic behind collaborative consumption like Airbnb isn't the inventory or the money, she said. It's using the power of technology to build trust among strangers. Trust also comes from brands being authentic and transparent in communications. Trust is the most important factor for attracting users, encouraging interaction, and hopefully creating a community around a service. On this note, let's focus on our own language industry. I chose this particular slide because it's a good representation of our industry. We have different and diverse sectors. So imagine each of these bubbles that you see is a different sector within the larger language industry. And each of these diverse sectors has unique requirements that may or may not have something or anything in common with another sector. For example, a localization engineer with a community consecutive interpreter don't have that much in common. We also have within some sectors various subsectors. For example, under linguistic services, we have both subtitlers, translators, and interpreters, all with distinct characteristics creating their own bubble. So we're a very complicated industry. And where do we stand in the above sharing economy concept? What is the potential for us? Are there possible ways to share? Trust means a cohesive community. Is the language industry a cohesive community? When I say community, sharing is implied by its very nature. So please bear in mind that in this sense, community and sharing are synonymous. If we can change the slide, I want to take a moment and talk about the size of our industry. We know from Common Sense Advisory that we are growing and we are worth over $40 billion. However, this figure only relates to language services. I came across Ambient Insights, which has made some research for Canada. Of particular interest to me is that they include the sectors of language teaching. This makes completely sense to me because the students who graduate from a master's degree in translation started as language undergraduates. Some, or I should say a lot, went to language teaching, and some became linguists. Take a look at the difference of the two graphs from 2011 to 2015. The language services has increased, and the non-English language teaching has decreased. In order to understand what this means for us, we need a lot more information. For example, what is the number of graduates entering language teaching versus language services? Does it follow the same pattern? In short, we need a lot more information to understand the language industry, not just the size of expenditure. However, we do have some challenges as an industry, and I'm just going to highlight very briefly a few of them. So, the lack of data. We have many graduates, but we don't know how many we retain and in which sector they go. We have new freelancers, but we don't know where they came from or if they had degrees. We have industry measurements, but they're not complete. In some occasions, we have too much data, or we don't have the data, we don't have the access to the data, although we're aware that this data does exist. And on top of that, we don't have one specific organization responsible to deal with this data, to analyze it, and so on. And of course, the very contentious issue of who owns the data. There's confusion, which has led to mistrust over the years. Some more challenges are the diversity of career paths we have. No single career path focus. Basically, we start as a language, then we can deviate from many more. And a localization engineer will start from computer science and then will get into a localization department and start being a lot more focused on internationalization. Freelancing is difficult. So in order to become a freelancer, you have to have a lot more skills and a toolbox for business that perhaps you don't need if you're not a freelancer. There's a large number of graduates that are seeking all the very sexy corporate jobs, and the rest of the people are left to maybe change career. So although we have people that have graduated from language, they may end up working in any of the other business sectors, utilizing their second language just as an add-on. Some other challenges are the identity and skill set. We don't have very specific definitions of them. Some of the problems are inherent that speech is a universal human trait, translation is taken for granted, everybody thinks that just because they know a second language a little bit better and they're not even bilinguals, that it's easy to translate, and so on and so forth. But of course, we know that language is more than just words. It's about culture and it's about many, many more things. So outside our industry, nobody actually knows what we do, how we do it. And this is how we have the challenges of not being able to define our skill set and identity to the larger industry. Other challenges is how we are positioning ourselves and how we are perceived in the general industry. So we're perceived as being part of a chain of a bigger client, and we're just a small link, which is the language translation and localization. And as such, we are considered replaceable. Sometimes the entire supply chain of the language industry, starting with the language service provider to the single language service provider to the translator, the reviewer, and so on and so forth, the entire supply chain is considered replaceable. And finally, we are considered an add-on to many industries today. Other challenges that we have are the technology. For example, free machine translation has created a good enough output for people, and that, of course, has an impact for us. There is a lack of understanding of how this machine translation has actually been created, because people don't know that the engine behind it was fed by work that were done by human translators. So to move on, describing the challenges and problems of our industry is one thing, but what can be done to actually solve them? No doubt everybody has their own ideas, and that is one of the great characteristics that typifies the language professionals. Getting everybody on the same page is a monumental task, and we need to communicate to everyone in the language industry that there is an urgent need to get everybody engaged and interest for the common good of our industry. Perhaps this is the first challenge we need to overcome. Act as a whole and united community. The only way to create a sharing economy is through open collaboration, which requires trust and focus on the ultimate objective. And the strength of our community and identity are dependent in all of us and how we can work together for a common goal. So are there solutions? Well, I'm just going to briefly go over some of these just to show that we already have some solutions, some are in place, and some we can easily work towards. So when it comes to big data, creating a working group which is representative of all the sectors of our industry to tap into this and analyze is of paramount importance to us. But at the same time, we can start working with small data. Each of us can create the information that is required and share it between universities, between associations, and so on. Some other solutions when it comes to the career paths. If we could create a single career path, starting with the education becoming multidisciplinary. So our students don't just learn language and then move on to a master's, but along with the language, they learn translation, they learn localization, and they learn subtitling and all the things that consist of our different diverse sectors. We can find a way of facilitating freelancing through mentoring, helplines, business assistance, a lot of things. Now, there are a lot of associations who already do that, but we can do more. And finally, massive open online courses. These are extremely important. And I do believe that Google has already started creating the first one called Localization Essentials. I'm also very aware that many people have many training tutorials and many small courses to help people along the way. As long as we can have them free for everyone, I believe we will all benefit. Some other solutions in the positionings. What do we call ourselves? I share this definition. A linguist is a person who passionately facilitates communication across languages, cultures, and geographies, solves language translation problems, and is behind every industry's ability to reach audiences globally. I love this definition, but it is a mouthful. And how can we explain all this in a very simple way? Do the terms localization, subtitler have a strong presence and help people understand what we do? Is it possible that we may need to show that we fulfill a stronger need? We are using a word defining a language need. Perhaps we need to use a marketing term which is fulfilling a generalized need of the consumers. Perhaps we should start saying that we're in the business of communication. Some other solutions in technology are obviously explaining that behind every machine translation output, there are many translators who contributed to the engine creation. Automation makers have to acknowledge the contributions that the linguists do. And finally, I want to talk about blockchain technology. Although it is still at the early stages and there are benefits for us using it, we are not yet a cohesive community to be able to partake of these benefits. There have already been attempts to create a cryptocurrency for our industry, which have all followed with mistrust and obstacles. For me, blockchain technology is not about the currency. It's about transparency and global unification of processes and workflows. It is a distributed ledger which is accessible and shared by everyone involved, and hence the ownership of particular content can be labeled while shared with others. It cannot be created by a controlling entity or even hosted, meaning a for-profit company. To be successful, it needs the entire industry to adopt it. Therefore, it needs an independent organization to host and regulate it. So some other solutions for defining our identity. To strengthen the identity, I will talk in the next section of this presentation on the sense of community and the community canvas, which are two models that are worth understanding and knowing about. So what do we need to do to create a strong community? So let's go to the sense of community. This is a social study that was done in 1986, and it's actually a landmark study done by David Macmillan and David Chavis. So in this study, although it was done in 1986, and some people may think it's obsolete, actually it's the backbone of everything we have today in regards to community. And it's a landmark study, an article, and it has been cited over 1,000 times in other scientific articles. The four foundations are membership, influence, meeting needs, and shared emotional connections. These are the four foundations for having a strong sense of community. Now, being able to understand these foundations is what can drive people to help from within in a self-managed situation or community to strengthen the sense of community for everyone. So in membership, boundaries separate insiders from outsiders. Smaller communities are stronger because they have higher boundaries. Who is allowed in and who not? The open-ended community with no clear community will not have engaged members, basically. Emotional safety refers to the ability to discuss difficult and controversial topics that cannot be discussed anywhere else. The challenge of people investing time and effort in a community is to have easy but meaningful methods of doing that. The more time investment we all put into the common good, the more the sense of community for all of us will increase. In influence as a foundation, people only participate in a community if they feel they can influence the community. Notice the word feel in this sentence. Not everyone will be able to influence the community, but everyone needs to be able to be heard, at least to feel that they're being heard. And we can prominently basically feature contributions, newsletter flashes, promote experts, and have member write-ups. In meeting needs as a foundation, the status of being a community member should be a status symbols that members can embrace and be proud of, which means people outside the community need to know how important the community is. The higher the profile of your community, the more members want to join. Competence. People want to be in a community with the best and brightest. Linguists are highly intelligent people who solve language problems daily. So that for us is already a given. Shared values. A strong constitution or purpose statement for the community will define the community and will outline why the community exists, what the community believes in, and what the community intends to achieve. And finally, briefly on the shared emotional connections, the communities with a stronger sense of community basically oscillate at the same emotional frequency. They're happy, sad, and angry at the same time. So by having regular contact, the more the people interact, the more they like each other. Meaningful interactions is not just exchanging information. Members need to personally get to know each other. And a shared history is very important. Let's not just document the community history. Let's make it an epic story. Our community should sound as interesting as possible. Emotional discussions. Members are likely to feel the same way about the same things at the same time. They are likely to share their feelings with one another. And that will strengthen the overall sense of community, and it will begin to develop even more. So moving on to the second model, community canvas framework. Three friends set out to find out how communities are built. Their aspiration was to find the underlying questions and patterns that create this sense of belonging in most communities. This is a framework that will help build and run any new community, analyze and improve an existing community. They have guidelines, they have summary, they have various templates to help. And it also helps us identify all the important areas and helps us ask the right questions. So in the next slides, I will very briefly underline that they have three sections: identity, experience, and structure. And altogether, there are 17 themes. So the first of the section, if we can change slide, is identity. Very briefly, identity deals with the themes of purpose, member identity, values, success definition, and brand. The next theme, which is, can we change experience? Thank you. Deals with the themes of selection, transition, shared experiences, rituals, content, rules, and roles. And finally, the last section of structure deals with the themes of organization, governance, financing, channels and platforms, data management. These are all important, and you can all find them at their website. It is community-canvas.org. So what I want to share here before we move on is how you will notice that the community canvas is also heavily based on the sense of community model that I described earlier with the 4 foundations. And I have shared these 2 models with you to demonstrate all the things we need to put in place in order to start functioning like a community, which will lead us to sharing. And having heard what the benefits of the sharing economy are, and all the drivers that need to be in place for us to partake in the sharing, how do you think we can achieve this? We need to start conversations and brainstorming. We need to find the way of being online in the various social media and keep on talking. The more we talk, the more we brainstorm, the more we will start creating those requirements to allow us to become a cohesive community. To finish my presentation, I would like to share the approach that Translation Commons is taking in the hope that it will resonate with you. We are, I believe, the most diverse community in the world. We communicate globally and hope to persuade those still struggling in the old ways of working to join us. Some particular initiatives are worth mentioning here. The Mentoring Think Tank, how mentors share their expertise, the Interpreting Think Tank, examining new technologies for interpreters, the Technology Think Tank, working on a Linport interoperability project, the Terminology Group, a new certification working group exploring requirements for various sectors. We just created the volunteer framework, putting the basis for future mentoring by creating groups which match experienced professionals with young graduates and students. Have a look at the topology of the service on our website. It's translationcommons.org. This is not to blow our own trumpet about how sophisticated we are. It's to show how sophisticated the language industry is. So Translation Commons as an online resource and platform is based on a main threefold structure of translate, share, and learn. There are many benefits to these 3 modules. We have come to believe that the 3 basic questions that we answered is, what do we do? What do we want? what do we need? So in the Translate, we are trying to offer many tools as we can, open source, donated licenses, cloud, hosted on our own servers, everything with security, the more we can, to allow all the people to experiment. Perhaps an experienced translator has never translated a software application. So by having the tool that actually can do this and the examples, then perhaps they can take a try and see if they like it. The same is happening with subtitling. We use the Texas, the students of the master's degree of the Texas University to pilot the Translation Commons website, specifically the Translate module. And it opened up a huge new avenue of potential career paths for those students when they tried the open source subtitling tool Amara. So we want people, and we encourage people to try more. What do we want is what part of share. We want to create working groups, we want to collaborate, we want to create the circumstances of sharing knowledge, and all of that is under our share module. And finally, what do we need? We need to keep on learning. We need to share that knowledge between us. We need to be able to have access to information. There are so many resources that are free on the internet that many people have created globally, and yet there is no place that it's organized. So under Learn, we're trying to organize all these resources. So I want to mention very briefly that some of the future developments are going to be mostly the mentoring platform, where we want to partner, we want to create the matching situation. And finally, we want to have a lot more partnerships with other nonprofits. And our mission, which is to share knowledge, resources, tools, and facilitate initiative, is just the beginning. Translation Commons will grow the way the members, each of you, makes it grow by sharing. So for today, thank you so much for sharing your time with me and listening to my insights on the sharing economy and how we can make it work for us. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. It was a fantastic speech. Now let me ask some questions from the audience. And first of all, I would like to switch back to your webcam image. Just a second.
Hello there.
Yeah, here it is. So let's start with the questions. The first one is, rather deep one. The sharing economy model is based on the possibility for the community to share assets and services horizontally through platforms and technology. However, the problem arises with regard to the control of the platform and technology, and therefore with regard to the use of data exchanged by the users. When we use public machine translation and cloud storage, we put our clients and our data at risk. How the data security is maintained in this case, and what should we do, and what should we take into account?
So first of all, I completely agree. Whoever controls the platform controls the data. And that's exactly why I said that, like with blockchain technology, this cannot be hosted or controlled by an organization which is for profit or which has its own agenda. So this has to be a community-based membership, self-managed community that can do that. So everybody gets the benefit. There are plenty of models of this self-managed community. And I think that, it is something that can be done as long as everybody adopts it. And as far as the client confidentiality is concerned, everybody means everybody, meaning including the clients. So in order to deal with that specific problem of the confidentiality, certain steps need to be taken into the platform, into the information, data, and everything. So this is not something that I can give you a specific solution, because we're not even close to that situation of a self-managed community where we can bring together both clients, translators, LSPs, and everyone. I think that with an open mind and for the benefit of everyone, we can put those steps in place to cater for these issues.
Thank you so much. The second question from the attendee of the webinar is about collaborative consumption. If the collaborative consumption is about building trust, there is an area for using it for not good reasons. Do you know, were there any occasions of cheating or unfair behavior?
Do you mean in our industry or in general?
Yeah, I think that the question is about the linguistic industry.
I think we all know. And I'm not going to name situations, but we all know there is a mistrust amongst many. There are, for example, scammers, but there are also people that have been very greedy and have been dishonest. We all know. There are many boards in Facebook and LinkedIn that you can just go and read everything you need to read. We are aware of that. But the whole idea of a sharing economy means that we have a change in values. So we will try share the common good values between us and try to identify the ones without, and either shun that behavior or make sure that it's not tolerated.
To identify some kind of regulations to, get rid of unfair behavior examples. Yeah.
When I spoke about the community canvas, if you've noticed, the third theme was structure. And in that structure, governance was very important. So these are guidelines. These are how, the community needs to be structured and operate, workflows in place, safety valves for everyone, for the members, for the people that are in the committee, self-managing the community, for the clients, for the data, for everything.
Thank you so much, Jeannette. The next question from Facebook about the communities, by the way. What are the dark sides of the communities you've described, and if there are enough management facilities to moderate all communities' needs?
Again, is this question for the language industry or for the sharing?
Yeah, the question is from the language industry expert, so I believe she's interested in language industry aspects.
Okay, so it's very similar to the previous question, if I'm correct. So again, that regulation has to be self-managed by the community itself, and it isn't something that happens from one day to the other. It is something that the change of behavior has to happen by continuously shunning the unaccepted behavior and guiding people what the right behaviors are. We do not change from one day to the other. It'll take a long time. And of course, the younger generations, which don't have the years of experience of mistrust and the things that have happened to them, plus they have completely different values than the 20th century, industrial revolution values that some of the older people we have. So it will be more difficult for the older generations and to change that or to find that trust. And we will always have that mistrust or that concern. But at the same time, it doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't try and we shouldn't start. Because if we don't start today, we won't reach that point that, we will be. And we don't want to be the obstacle for the younger generations who don't have that problem. So we don't want to be their anchor. So we need to make that effort.
Thank you so much for your answer. A question about Translation Commons, specifically about mentoring and students. An attendee asks, so every future translator can go to the Translation Commons and look for some mentoring from experienced colleagues. Can you please tell more about the option?
Okay, so this is always under development, and there is no such platform yet, but it is something we wish to do. So we need to bring a lot more into this project. Both people, experienced people with building a mentoring platform, but also, some funding to create it online. At the moment, what we're doing is whatever we're creating and developing, all the small things that we're doing with mentoring in the future in mind. So for example, when we created the volunteer framework for people to come and work for Translation Commons to acquire experience and to be able to put it on their resumes and to work with experienced people, we created always a matching situation where there would always be an experienced advisor from the advisory board overlooking a set of projects, and each project or each category would have an experienced professional with at least 3 or 4 or 5 years experience. And we would then match 2 or 3 coordinators to that professional. So they would be learning how to do certain things. So yes, there is a little bit of hand-holding in the beginning from the professional volunteer, but the aim is not for the professional volunteer to do everything. It's to start breaking down the tasks for the graduates, to start helping them do certain things, and then acquaint themselves with the task, the industry, and learn from that. I urge you to look at click on the Translation Commons website, the word volunteer. You can find it in many places. So when you click on it, it will tell you that you can either join a group as a volunteer, an existing group, or you can create a new group and attract volunteers, or you can actually volunteer for the Translation Commons website. And a lot of these positions are community positions. So if you open up each of these positions, you will see that the same project will have a professional as a manager and a non-professional as a coordinate, like a graduate. Further down, you will see we have the development for the localization of the website, where we're going to start having professional localizers working with young graduates and helping them localize our website. And finally, the last part is the language translation. And this is the one that we need to develop next. And what we need for this is we need those translators who are experienced to become the editors of the language. And of course, depending on how popular each language is, we need many of editors. So for example, for the French language, we may need, 5 professional translators as editors if we have, 40, young graduates who all do into French, and so on for all the languages. And we're looking right now to start that framework for the language mentoring. It's going to take us some time. We will do it. And once we are able to finalize the website mentoring aspect, the next thing is for us to develop an actual mentoring platform where the various people, whether they are mentors in Translation Commons already, or they're mentors in other associations or programs, they can come and have their profile. And through this profile, they can be matched, or, a young graduate can come and know who it is and come to them and talk to them. So we want to facilitate these relationships. It's not clearly defined yet. We don't know precisely how it's going to work. We have to have a survey done. So far, what we have done, actually, it's the first thing the Translation Commons did. So it's backtracking back to 2015, where Nancy Mattis was heading the mentoring think tank and created with a large group of people a survey. And this survey was then analyzed and conclusions were drawn, which are all available for you to download from the website. And based on that survey, we created mentoring guidelines where freelancers can actually find all the tools they need and all the information they need on how to mentor somebody else. And at the same time, a mentee can find out what the expectations really should be from a mentor. And that's just the beginning. Of course, you know, we need a lot more, and it needs a village. So we need everybody to come forward and help.
And for funding, volunteering, and etc., etc. When you spoke about this, you know, some kind of a website mentoring platform, it came to my mind that it is some kind of a marketplace for mentoring where one can come and industries or specific topics one is interested in, and find mentors who offer some knowledge and experience to share in these specific topics.
Well, the word marketplace is very loaded because it does imply that this platform is created for profit. And that is not the intention of Translation Commons.
Free of charge and...
Not necessarily. Each mentor and mentee can enter in their own relationship. So we don't shun away from, you know, the financial, you know, imperatives of our industry. But what we want to make sure is understood is that we want to create an awareness, and we want to create the circumstances that people can have access to mentors and understand what mentoring is, and instigate it as something that should be part of our industry.
Thank you so much. And I think that this would be the last on-air question for today, and all next questions we will write down and send to you and ask you to maybe answer later on Facebook. But the last one, as I understood, users can share cat tool licenses. Could you please tell us a bit more about that?
So the CAT tools that are in Translate, the module, at the moment there is Poodle. Translate 5 is being created now, which is an open, all of these are open source. And I recently found out another open source CAT tool, which is called Zanata. So these are all and will be soon available for people to use. Mm-hmm. We do write on the website that this will be a common translation memory. Some of them actually don't even create translation memories. You have to create it separately, extract it and create it separately. But we do make a note for everybody that this is not something that they want to create, use it for professional work, that this is for them to test the tool, to find out whether they like it, whether it's useful for them, and so on and so forth.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your speech and for your answers, for answering the questions. Dear attendees, I would like to say that you can send the rest of the questions to our email. We will send them to Jeannette, or you can post your questions on YouTube or on Facebook. Thank you so much for coming. And by the way, may I please ask my colleagues to post the link to Translation Commons in the chat window now. So because I can see the questions, someone can find the website, please. And now I am switching back to the slides, and I will have my final words. Thanks again, Jeannette. It was an honor for us. Thank you so much for coming and for speaking at UTIC, and see you soon.
See you soon. Thank you.
Now I'm switching back to the slides. Dear friends, our next webinar will take place on October 18th at 4 p.m. GMT +3 in 2 weeks. And our guest, Ekaterina Chashnikova, will talk about different kinds of pharmaceutical texts, and we'll examine them based on the translator's knowledge and expertise. Please join us, and the registration is already open on our website. To stay in touch with us, please find and follow us on social media. We always list full links in our video descriptions. Finally, we would like to thank UTIC Camp 2019 and UTIC webinar sponsors and partners. Our next live event, UTIC Camp Conference, will be held on July 2028 in 2009, and we will be glad to meet our standing partners in our sponsors team, and we invite everybody to come. Dear attendees, we kindly ask you to give us some feedback. It is very important for us. You can see right now in your chat window a link to the form. Please let us know your opinion about the webinar. And we don't say goodbye, as we will already meet you soon. As for me, the next webinar will be hosted by Irina, so I'm saying you goodbye for a longer term. Thank you so much, and see you soon.